Welcome to Merryfield's Gardening Advisor, brought to you by the experts at Merryfield Garden Center. Join us as we discover beautiful plants, new trends, and exciting ideas for your landscape. So let's get growing together. Merryfield's Gardening Advisor, bringing out the best in your garden.
Good morning, everybody. I'm David Yost, and joining me today is Renetta Holt, one of our fantastic landscape designers from Merryfield. How are you doing, Renetta?
Great, David. Great to see you again.
Hi. Good to have you here. Now, Renetta, you came up with the title for today's program, so I'm going to let you explain where we're going today.
Where we're going? Well, you know, it's funny. In our day and time, you drive up to the drive-thru and you want something to eat, and all your choices are extreme burger or extreme burrito. And then you go to the drugstore and you buy extreme whitening toothpaste and extreme laundry detergent. So today, we're going to talk about tough plants for tough places. So we are calling it extreme gardening conditions.
Okay, well, we're jumping on that bandwagon. Everything's going to be extreme today. So yeah, that's our marketing effort out there. Hope everybody appreciates it. And we're going to start out with a couple pictures just to maybe give a little better explanation of where we're coming from. So in this first picture, this is what I'm calling the ideal garden. This is really not what we're talking about today.
No, it's not. This is kind of, like you said, all the conditions are perfect. You've got every element in this landscape and everything is just right.
Exactly, and every plant has its place and room to grow, a diverse collection, a place to sit, a place to play. This is kind of what I would like to have.
Well, yeah, I think we all would like to have that. That's our customer's goal, and that's our job to help them achieve it.
Yeah, but not all of us actually have the opportunity to do that. What we're looking at in the next picture, again, is, you know, I'll be selfish, or I'm not sure, self-promoting, say, now this is my garden. It's not the extreme, but what I'm using is an example of what I'm saying with plants. When we're dealing with plants and we're dealing with the environment, plants are very good at adapting to the conditions that are there, but plants also compete with each other. They all need sun, they need water, they need nutrients, air. Those are really the only things that plants need to grow, but they're in competition with each other. And so if we were dealing with kind of extreme conditions or extreme places where these resources are limited, then that means we become very limited in what we can do with our plant palette. But what we do as gardeners, we're constantly in there, we're manipulating the environment.
That's right. We're amending the soil, we're adding irrigation.
Exactly. We're sort of raising the canopy on trees. But then we're also selecting plants and combinations that will tolerate these conditions and live together.
And that's a good word, David, tolerate. When we were planning the show, we kept talking about these plants, and a lot of them are, of course, we try to find the right plant for the right place. But in the show today, we're also going to be talking a lot about plants who are tolerant of conditions.
Right, exactly. So you'll hear this word about tolerate. You know, plants tolerate different conditions, adapt to different conditions, preferred conditions. So that can drive a lot of people crazy in gardening, because if you want something that's sort of an absolute, well, this plant grows in, you know, dry, shady conditions, or this plant grows in sunny, moist conditions, nothing's ever quite that exact.
No, no. And so that's where, you know, if you put a sunny plant in a little bit too much shade, you know, it'll probably grow. It won't thrive as much, or it won't bloom as much for you, but it'll be okay. So we're going to talk about a lot of options today. Right.
So that's our theme for the program, but I also want to remind everybody at the Garden Center, our summer tent sale continues at all 3 locations. This is where everything we go through, and we're sort of cleaning house, taking seasonal items, discontinued items, scratch and dent things, put them out there under the tent, mark them down anywhere from 50 to 85% off, and it's a real. So if you're a bargain hunter, it's kind of like your little paradise. And we constantly put stuff out there.
I got 2 really nice lamps there.
I bought a couple candles myself, and you know I'm not a real shopper, so there's something for everybody. I put a nice hummingbird feeder out there yesterday.
Did you?
Somebody's going to grab that.
Okay.
Might be gone. Okay, so that's our announcements for the day, and then we're going to go right into what we call our first of the extreme conditions, the one that I call the most difficult and the most challenging habitat of all, which is dry shade. Because we were talking about plants, they need sun, they need water, they need nutrients, and when you're under a dense canopy of trees like this in a forested area, where trees are blocking out the sun, they're intercepting a lot of the rain, and they're competing for nutrients. This is really, for me, the most difficult environment to work with.
Oh, I agree.
I'm sure as a designer you run into this all the time.
Oh, yeah, I do. And sometimes it's very difficult when you get to a customer's home and you see these conditions. I love this picture because in some cases there really isn't a whole lot you can plant, and you may have to cover the ground another way. Here's a nice rustic flagstone patio with some seating, and if you use some containers to provide the color of the flowers and things like that, sometimes that's all you can do.
Yeah, and that's a lot of times I am talking to people in these environments about, you know, hey, did you ever think about, you know, a little woodland path or mulch or patios? And that's definitely a good solution that's in there. But like I said, we're in the gardening business, and as gardeners, we want to have plants.
We do want to have plants. A question I often get is, can you cut the roots of the tree to make room for some plants? Well, I mean, you can, but it's really not the best idea, because anytime you do something like that, you are damaging the tree, and you have to make a choice sometimes. If you want the beautiful shade canopy, you're going to have to figure out another way to deal with it underneath.
Absolutely, and I think our next picture shows a good example as far as another way to deal with it. I selected this again. It's a large oak tree, you can see, and again with all the root competition that's in there. In this environment, what the designer chose to do was actually go in and just slightly raise the grade or elevate it. When you're working around trees, you do not want to bury the tree roots. That root flare you can see is still there where the roots and the stem kind of branch out. So that always needs to be visible. They brought in just enough loose soil to put some shade-tolerant plants in there. This is a mix of geraniums, ferns. There's, I think, a little bit of sedge mixed in there as well. So these plants are thriving in that condition, but they are also supplementing with a little bit of water. So we have to kind of work with the environment we've given. And while we start out talking about dry shade, this is getting some supplemental watering. Without that, I'm not sure these plants would look near as good.
No, I agree. And then we're going to actually talk to you about a couple of plants in particular. Epimedium is a great plant for dry shade. It forms a ground cover, and there are a lot of different varieties. Some have slightly different color leaves. Turns a little bit of a burgundy color in the winter, and then it has a cute little flower that you can see. It's not a very in the picture it looks like the flower is bigger than it is. They're teeny little things, but it's sort of a nice little add-on.
Yeah, and then in the next picture is another ground cover that does well in dry shade or tolerates it. There's actually two plants in that picture. You can see one is the variegated, is the grass. That's a forest grass or Haconicola. That's a plant which really does need moisture, but right behind it is the euphorbia. And there's many types of euphorbia. This is one that does spread and creates a dense ground cover. Can almost become a little bit too aggressive and have to be contained at times. But this is one that's very tolerant of dry shade conditions. It's deer resistant. And you're seeing the foliage on one side, and the flower on this, it blooms. It comes up in very early spring, usually even as early as February or March. But then that flower will persist and last for literally months.
And they're really interesting flowers, great for containers as well.
Yeah. So if you're dealing with that kind of root competition, dry shade, there's a couple ideas. And we're going to have to take a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to probably switch environments on you and give you some more ideas for extreme garden conditions. Pretty, lots of color there.
Yep.
Great. Well, Renetta and I are here today talking about extreme garden conditions. Like I said, we started with the most extreme, or in my opinion, the most extreme of that dry shade where you've got a lot of root competition, just can't get enough water and sun to grow much of anything. But there are, like I said, we're talking about a few plants that tolerate it. One that I've had good success with coming up in this next picture is called sweet box or sarcococa. It gets its name because it is in the boxwood family. You wouldn't really know that just looking at it,
no.
But it is, and it's evergreen. What did you call that? A shrublet?
I called it a shrublet.
Yeah.
I named it. Yeah, because
that's my new word. I'm still learning. I have
like
to get
that?
used to. Oh, I love it. It's exactly what it is.
I'm surprised you remember that. Yeah, I call it a shrublet because it is smaller than what we would consider a normal shrub size to be, but yet it's a little taller than a ground cover. One of the great aspects to it is that it will sucker and it will provide little runners, and it'll eventually spread in the area that you want it to. It's not a real fast grower, though.
It's not, and when it does bloom, it's got a tiny little flower that you wouldn't even notice it, except that it puts out a really nice sweet fragrance in early spring. So
kind
that's
of like a
sweet
gardenia
box.
almost. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, the nice thing here is that's deer resistant. The euphorbia we showed earlier is deer resistant. I'm pretty sure that medium is also on that deer resistant list, because I know a lot of times that's a concern in that same environment. Good word, so far.
Yes, so far.
Yeah. So there's a few things you can work with. I have to tell you, there's not a whole lot, but there's a few things, and if you can work and adapt that environment, you know, supplementing some water, raising some tree canopy, then you get a whole lot more in your palette of plants to work with.
Yeah, right. Now we're going to switch gears to extreme sun and hot conditions.
Exactly. Turn the page to the other extreme.
Turn the page. And I love this picture. Little story about it. My husband and I were driving down to the northern neck of Virginia, and it was about 9 o'clock in the morning. And my poor husband has always got one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake, because I'm always making him screech to a halt. And I grab my camera and run across the street. Here on the side of a highway, in the blazing sun, you know that this field of sunflowers is getting no attention whatsoever. But yet, look at them. They're beautiful. They don't mind one bit. You can look and see the hard, rocky soil right there. It even looks parched when you're looking at it. But those sunflowers made me smile. I took about 1 million pictures of them.
Yeah, that's what I say. I don't think you can really see on your TV, but that little inside is trying to show where that soil is actually cracking. It's so dry.
It's so dry. And so, you know,
they couldn't be happier.
They couldn't be happier. And it's prime example of the right plant in the right place.
But that's not really how we're going to landscape our yard.
No, but I had to put it in there anyway.
Exactly.
Now, how we might landscape our yard is one of the next pictures, and this is one of my customers. I wish I could take credit for this island bed, but actually she had done it herself. But I love this picture because it does show that this island gets sun all day long. It's in Haymarket. It's at the base of the mountain. It's very exposed for all conditions, and as you can see, there's a large asphalt driveway that this island is adjacent to, and the plants are thriving. It's an absolutely beautiful, wonderful choice of plants for this environment.
And I get customers all the time saying, oh, it's just so scorching hot out there, I can't grow a thing. And this is showing, hey, actually she's got everything going on. When I say that the garden, this little composition has got contrast in the form of the plants, the texture, the color. Now, of course, the one thing is I have to assume is she probably did improve the soil. So again, there's been a little bit of modification to the environment.
Right, but I don't think too much in this situation. In the next photograph, it's a little bit closer, and you can see some of the different plants that she's used in there. She's got the ornamental grasses as a backdrop. There's some crepe myrtles in there, spirea, and that's a plant. We wanted to bring one in, but we were kind of limited in space. Spirea is one of those wonderful plants that really is tolerant of many, many conditions. They come in many different colors, from chartreuse to a dark green, different sizes, different shapes, and they bloom a nice little flower for you in the summer. If you give it a little haircut in the middle of the summer, it might bloom twice for you.
Yeah, and the grasses, Peggy's going to be featuring those some next week, so we're not delving on too much. But again, when you're talking about hot, sunny, dry, exposed areas, I do immediately start thinking of the ornamental grasses. They're warm season grasses that are adapted to hot, sunny environments. That's where they come from, and that's where they originate. Always give you durability and beauty back there, and the texture contrast. And we talked a little bit about crepe myrtles last week, which are coming into full bloom right now. Again, crepe myrtles, you know, we'll put them out there. They require full sun.
They do.
That's out there.
And they're just so tolerant of everything.
Right. Now, like we talked about, anytime you're putting a new plant in, that's going to require a little bit of supplemental watering. So we talk about heat and drought tolerant. This is after they've had a chance to get the roots out in the soil and get them a little bit better
Everything
established.
needs to be babied a little bit when it first goes in the ground.
It does.
So, and in the next picture, again, I want to touch a little bit about on coneflowers. They're my new love, David, these coneflowers. There's all these hybrids. We typically had the purple coneflower Magnus, and now we have some shorter ones, Kim's Knee High, which I think these might be in the picture. We also have these wonderful hybrids that have fun names. I think in my next life I want to be the namer of coneflowers. There's one called Tomato Soup. You know, they've got names like, you know, Hot Chili Peppers, all kinds of things.
Absolutely. And we brought one in to show you. Now that's the coneflower. Before we go, I'm going to interrupt the slides there a little bit. Coneflower, again, it's a native to the plain states and everything, and so like I said, you can imagine it growing out there in the heat of the plains with all that showing. And we also brought catmint in, which we were thinking could be a sort of a nice partner.
A nice combination. And by the way, there are some coneflowers that are fragrant even, so you can get that too. And if you can see the combination of the catmint, which again will grow in almost anything. If you put it in the shade, it's not going to bloom too great, but I've put it under some big maples and things where nothing would grow with the root competition, and the catmint is about the only thing holding on in there.
Absolutely. So these are some great ways to add that color, because like we were talking about some of the shrubs in there, but she also has the perennials go in that planting bed, and you can definitely do the same thing in your garden.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, again, we're going to have to take a little commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue with our extreme gardening theme, and we're going to continue talking about those hot, sunny areas. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on Merrifield's Gardening Advisor, and we've been talking a little bit about plants for really hot, sunny, exposed areas, which can be a challenge because the nice thing is, hey, the plants have plenty of sun, so they grow and they bloom, but keeping enough water in them.
Watering is always an issue, and I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about that. We have been very, very lucky this summer. We've only had, very few uncomfortably hot days. It's been in the 80s. I don't think that we could have asked for better weather, and we haven't gone into any kind of a drought condition this summer that I'm aware of.
I think we're already over 30 inches for the year of rainfall.
So we've been getting good rain in the afternoon, but it hasn't been the, a lot of times when we have the afternoon thunder boomers, it's so fast that the water evaporates and really doesn't do any good. But they've been a little bit longer rains into the evening, which has been great. But I wanted to talk about my favorite tool. This is my favorite water monitoring tool. A lot of my customers realize, and I tell them all the time, I am a dinosaur. I don't like monitors, I don't like computers, but this is a soil probe, and you can see it has a core that's open. And what you do is when you're not sure about how long you've watered something, did it get enough water, because what ideally you want to, when you water, soak the entire root ball. You can insert the probe into the area near the root ball, and actually extract a core sample of the soil. And what's great is you can actually look and see, is the whole area wet? Is it moist? Have you only watered down to where an inch is wet and then the rest is just dust that flies out the bottom? It really is a good tool so that you can visually see what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I recommend those all the time. I have people that have a new landscape and they've spent thousands of dollars on the landscape, or even in a specimen tree. It's like, go ahead, spend a few more dollars to monitor the watering in it to assure that you're successful in there.
Right.
And I agree. I can touch it, you can feel it. You're not left trying to interpret, what some computer thing is telling you.
And it gets further down. It's fine if you stick your fingers in there to check the moisture, but this will get you down several inches to see if you are getting that moisture down into the root ball.
Yeah. And again, we probably mentioned it a couple times, but it's different with new plants than established plants. Like the gardens we're looking at have had a few years to establish.
Yes.
Those roots are out there. They're benefiting from the rainfall, but with a new plant where the roots are still confined, being able to supplement that watering and being able to test soil, know exactly what's going on is so critical.
It's like having a new baby. You just don't know right at the beginning exactly how to take care of it. But, you know, with patience and checking and everything, because it can't take care of itself right at the beginning.
Right. But back to some plants, because we're talking about plants for hot, sunny, dry areas. And one of the best for this, and really, really gaining lots of attention over the past few years, you know, is going to be sedum. I'm pretty sure this is Sedum Autumn Joy. This has been around for probably 20 years, but it really kind of, to me, broke new ground in terms of sedum. It got people to look at this plant again. This is one that's beginning to come into bloom right now at this time of the year. The leaves are sort of large and succulent, but it opens up with a pink flower beginning right now, or mine will probably be opening in a couple weeks from now. And then that fades out in sort of a russet red color, so it holds the flower color for a long time. And sedum, again, these are succulents. The leaves are juicy, and they actually hold moisture and water in the tissue of the leaf, so that's how they survive extended dry spells. And then there have been more and more varieties of this. There's autumn fire, there's neon, you know, developing different flower colors. And then really I'm going to say it's with the advent of green roofs and people looking for plants that they can grow up literally on rooftops where they're totally neglected. Sedum really has just exploded in terms of the availability and the number of varieties that are out there. And I thought this was just a fantastic use along this sidewalk area where obviously you've got sort of the heat island effect, you know, the road and the sidewalk that's there. You know, this is by a bus stop, which is where the bench is. You know, it's really, truly meets, I think, call our definition of an extreme environment.
Yes, and a lot of the newer sedums that we're seeing, there are a few that are evergreen. A lot of them bloom a little flower. It's a little bit insignificant, but again, it's a nice little gift, you know, along with the colorful foliage. Some of them are chartreuse, some of them are more of a burgundy color, and they form a really nice ground cover. As a matter of fact, we're beginning to carry these wonderful flats of mixed sedum. So, you know, a lot of times the customer's problem is deciding which one because they like all of them. So these flats are really nice if you have a large area, a slope perhaps that you need to cover. You can actually buy flats of the sedum and its mixed varieties in there.
And that's why I liked where they had all the varieties mixed together, giving you all that. It's just beautiful. It's in there. Now, they're also been hugely popular in containers, because when we talk about container garden, imagine you've got flower pots sitting out there in your deck or patio. You just don't have the volume of soil. It's elevated and raised above ground. Now these plants, they're just going to dry out.
They are, and you know, they can really, again, that word tolerate quite a bit of dryness. They can grow in rock gardens and different things. And I'm looking at this one. This is a beautiful a succulent. And also something else that when I looked at this slide I remembered is an old-fashioned plant that's a succulent that's making a huge comeback is hens and chicks. You know, that's kind of something that people nostalgia remember from their grandmother's gardens, and we're seeing a lot of hens and chicks as part of container gardening as well.
Well, I've got my garden. You're not calling me old, are you?
I didn't say that.
Okay, good. Now in the next picture, again, another old favorite I'll show you that kind of gets overlooked sometimes, I think, and merits more attention. This is showing, again, that sunny hillside slope, so water's running off of there. This down American University, I think they've come up with a wonderful plant combination. But that green that you see all along the sidewalk and creeping up the hills is liriope. That's a plant that most of us know. And sometimes I think that's I don't know, dismissed a little bit because it is commonplace, but we love it because it will grow from one extreme to the other.
Well, that's why it's commonplace, because it works. And when you see something, a lot of times people are, oh, I'm tired of liriope, or I'm tired of this or tired of that. I see it all over. Well, guess why? The reason you see it all over is you can put it anywhere.
Yeah, and then for seasonal color, the yellow in there is lantana, which is, again, that's a tropical plant, so it's grown as an annual in our climate. But I have found lantana, once it's rooted in there and once it's established, is extremely heat and drought tolerant. flowering. Just gives you tons of flowers. And behind it, the red is begonia. Again, everybody thinks of begonias as a shade-loving plant, and it is. But there it's showing you how adaptable it is, and that particular one, that wax-leaf begonia, adapting to full sun conditions. Now, real quickly, because I know we're now out of time, I wanted to say a couple things about liriope, because like I said, I think sometimes it gets a little bit dismissed, but
well,
it is adapts
and
it
either.
grows to all those different conditions. There's many different varieties. There's actually about 5 different species. I just brought a couple of them in here. Shows you again the leaf variegation, and one that's called Silver Dragon. One here is called Royal Purple, which is coming into bloom right now.
It's got a bigger bloom. Really, it's a pretty showy, and a bigger blade too. It's a beautiful plant.
Now, what's happening, I'm just trying to point out, these are varieties of what's called Liriope spicata. Liriope spicata is one that spreads, that creeps out. So I think one of the things I do is I get complaints sometimes about, oh, I planted liriope and it's just running all over my bed, it's creeping into everything, and I just tell them, well, that's because you bought the wrong type. There's also Liriope muscari, which is a clump former, and again, that's available, either variegated leaf or green leaf. You can see similarities that's in there. This is one that you plant it, and that clump does expand year to year. So again, it's the adaptability of this plant. This will grow in full sun, it will grow in full shade, and you just need to be aware of how you intend to use it in your landscape, whether you want the one that's going to be a nice tidy clump, or whether it's one that you want to spread and form a dense ground cover.
And they all have a purple bloom in the middle of the summer, which is a nice touch.
Right. And the maintenance on it's as easy as usually right around March time period. We just go through and we cut the old foliage off. It renews itself with nice fresh looking foliage that's in there. So again, that's why you see it so much, because it does adapt to all those extreme conditions. So once again, we're going to take a little commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to switch over, I think, to our next environment. Thanks everybody for joining us. We're talking about these extreme gardening conditions, kind of focusing on the extremes in terms of availability of water. And Renetta, I know that slopes always prevent that special condition.
I'll tell you, 2 years ago was the year of the slope. It seemed to me that every other job I went to, there was a slope that needed to be attended to. And that provides a really big challenge, not only in the fact that you need to have plants in there that are going to be able to root in and hold the ground and hold the slope, but often there are drainage issues, because when it rains hard, the water will run down that slope, and very often not even watering the plants, because it's moving so fast, it just moves right past the plants. So there's a lot of issues when you get to a slope. And so I want to talk a little bit about one of my customers that called me in. And in the first picture, you'll see it was a very, very steep slope. And she had a large shade tree that had to be removed. I believe it partially fell down, and they had it removed, which changed the entire environment there. It had been more of a shady condition with the root competition, but once the tree was out, it provided an opportunity to do something completely different. But it also provided its own set of challenges in that there was a huge amount of water volume running down that slope toward their house. So the first thing we decided to do, you can see in there's a dry stream bed, and what we did was we located the area that the water was basically coming through the slope, and we did this dry stream bed to try to disperse the water and send it laterally across the slope instead of coming straight down.
Now I have to ask, the little terracing, that little wall down the bottom, was that already pre-existing?
Yes,
or
that
was already
the wall
there.
at the bottom was a pre-existing wall. And so that was the first thing we did, and then we added some plants that were very tolerant of the slope conditions. I think in the next picture you can see a little bit better. We've got some ornamental grasses, we have the fall sunflowers, we've got some evergreens, and those things did a real good job. But as you see right next to them, we had a shady condition, and so we had to be aware of the fact that on this slope we had different microclimates, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that's really highlights the importance of paying attention to what's going on in the landscape, because there you're seeing the two extremes side by side. You know, extreme full sun, and then the other, pretty dense shade that's out there. And when watching and seeing how that changes throughout the day, so you can work with those kind of environments.
Right, and there's another thing that is, we don't want to neglect it in the landscape when you have really difficult conditions is, you know the go-to, David, for any kind of extreme condition.
Liriope.
No, well, yes.
Yeah, we just talked about that.
We did, but I have my own go-to thing. We could use your liriope in conjunction with my go-to item.
Which would be?
A boulder. I love boulders.
I forgot. That's right. You always refer people back to the boulder.
I know. I'm getting worried that my landscapes are getting a little redundant, because it seems like in every one I have at least 1 or 2 boulders. And we did in that last job that you saw as well. It was a little difficult to get them up to the top of the hill. But a boulder will take on its own life in the environment that it's in. If you've got a boulder in the sun, of course it's going to be a nice, bright, landscape feature for you, perhaps a focal point. But if you take that same boulder and you move it into a shady, wet condition, what's going to happen?
Maybe you get a little moss or lichens on there, and it gets even prettier.
Yep. So
yeah, I'm right with you. I got a little boulder, and I don't know if I can call it a boulder, or at least a large stone in my garden too.
Well, there's always
limited to what I could lift on my own.
Right. And we do carry quite a variety of them to help with your landscape. Conifers are also really good and a lot of times overlooked because they don't bloom. And people a lot of times will say, I'm not really interested in them, but they do provide a lot of color, contrast, even without flowers.
Absolutely, and that adaptation, I always try to point out where they've become needles or the leaf surface is diminished, they've got a very thick cuticle layer on. Again, those are all adaptations the plant has made to conserve moisture. So generally speaking, all these conifers, your pines and Chamaecyparis and spruce and so on, are going to be very drought tolerant, do well in dry conditions.
Yes, and here's an office building that I designed this raised bed for about 2 years ago, and we did use a couple of conifers in there. In the background you can see a deodar cedar, and we also have some globe cryptomeria off to the left. They're a wonderful conifer that get to be maybe 3 to 4 feet in diameter. Very little maintenance on them, very tough plant. We've used a Hinoki cypress in the front corner there, and then we brightened it up with something that we haven't mentioned today, black-eyed Susans, and that's a great native.
Yeah, I think our next picture, right, we get a little close-up on it there. And of course your favorite of all,
the boulders.
Right.
But this is a public environment. They are good about watering while the plants are being established, but you have to understand that, you're kind of at the mercy not of a homeowner, but at someone who's going to have to come through maintenance-wise and take care of that. We also added a few little Pocomoke crepe myrtles that are going to bloom here shortly.
Good. So again, I think that's just a great example of where you do get a lot of color, interest, variety, and forms, and everything going on in a low maintenance place that will stand those extremes.
That's right.
Great. Well, again, we're going to have to take a little commercial break, but stay with us, because when we come back, we're going to continue looking at good examples that you can put to work in your garden for those extremely difficult places. Okay, we're switching over to our next of the extreme environments, and we've been talking a lot about the really sunny, dry locations where we had both, if you can say, too much sun and not enough water. Well, we're going to switch now and say, okay, well, what happens if you're in moist or poorly drained conditions that's also shaded? So in this case, it's the other extreme of where I always say it's like, hey, water's like anything. In the garden world, we're complaining because there's not enough or there's too much. We always want to be in that middle ground.
Well, and at least with the hot dry, you can add water. I mean, if things start to get parched and you want something that needs a little bit more water, you can provide irrigation. You can provide water. But when you're in a hot, wet condition, often can't get rid of that water.
Exactly. So I thought this next garden would give a good example of this sort of how they handled this kind of condition. And one of the things, first of all, like Renetta was talking about on the hillside, hey, look, we also throw in that we've got a steep slope in the background. You can't see, but we've got a lot of water. This is actually a low spot. Again, this down American University, where they were establishing a relatively new garden bed. This hasn't had time to grow in. But the first thing they did very wisely was, in terms of providing for the runoff water that's coming from the street, they put this dry stream bed in so that they could channel the water where it had a place to go and prevent erosion or washing out along the slope. Now, obviously, this is also under the canopy of some tall, mature trees, so you have that competition for getting enough sunlight that's in there. They've also worked your favorite in there, Renetta. You see the boulder right up front.
I told you, everybody uses them.
Works in every environment that's there. And then they've also very carefully and wisely selected plants that are growing in there. The little shrub that you kind of is standing out a little bit taller than the others with the white flowers on it is one that's called clethra. Now, I've seen this go from full sun to this sort of bright shade conditions, but we use it a lot because it does tolerate the poorly drained environment.
It does, and clethra is one of those little surprise plants. I call it a Pied Piper plant. The reason I call it that is I'll see people coming into the garden center with their carts and they're looking for something entirely different. You know, they're wandering around looking for something for their garden, and in the middle of the summer they catch this wonderful scent, and all of a sudden they start sniffing the air, and pretty soon those baskets are turned in the direction of the bed that the clethra is in, and the next thing you know, they're walking out of the garden center with 5 clethra in their basket.
Yeah, that is fantastic for those uses. And like I said, anything's got a fragrance, you know, I'm going to go after it as well. So I've got a couple pictures here showing you this garden from different angles. I also want to mention this is a wildlife habitat area designated, and when you're there, sitting there, there's a little hard to see it. There's a nice couple little benches back there in an informal patio area. Casually, you can sit there, and this place is just full of birds. And this is, like I said, right down in northwest D.C. You can see the bus traffic behind it. But it's this, if you create this little oasis, you can get a little bit of respite from the noise and the city environment, and the birds take advantage of that as well. And you can see in there several other plants, you know, things like the red twig dogwood that's in there. And we're going to take a little bit of a closer look at it, but the water, when you get these heavy rains, and I happen to be there just the day following an extremely heavy downpour, this water comes through that dry creek bed and almost settles down at the bottom, and that's the place I want to take a little closer look at, because this is an area that's just plain old wet. I mean, water sits in that area, but again, it's not a negative. It's not really a problem, because they've used plants like the Acorus, which actually thrives in wet conditions, and it will grow in the shade. And this is that bright yellow variety.
I think that one's Ogon, but there are about 3 or 4 different varieties of Acorus that we carry. Common name is sweet flag, and it's literally could be used as a water plant as well. You know, in your water garden.
And then interspersed in there is lobelia, which is actually coming into bloom right now. It flowers in that July-August time period, so you get a little bit of color and show from the perennials as well. Now, we brought into the studio with us, you sort of selected a composition of some different annuals.
I did.
Which could also be used in a similar environment.
Right. One of the things that I love doing, this is the combination I put together over here.
We'll probably need to bring them over to the desk, and we can kind of show them one by one.
Okay, is a combination of annuals and perennials that can be used in wet environments. And the perennials that we have would be the hosta, of course, if you don't have deer, which actually can grow. You'll see this appear in our last slide, too, is a little a PS to the end of my story. But they come in wonderful, beautiful, all different kinds of colors and shapes. They bloom white and lavender flowers, sometimes fragrant. And then here we have another one of my favorite go-to plants for a wet condition, and this is called Carex grass. And it also comes in different varieties. There's some that are a little bit brighter green, there's some are solid green, and there's even one that's got a bronzy color called Toffee Twist. So they're great. And then if you want to pop it up with some annual color, it's a great combination to add the caladium. And even though we still can't have our things that we love, our wonderful impatiens, you can do the New Guinea impatiens. This is a very colorful combination. And then my all-time favorite annual is called Coleus. Look at that. A Coleus will go from a 4-inch pot to almost a 4-foot shrub within one season. And even though it is an annual, you just get a lot of bang for your buck. This one is called Kong Majestic, K-O-N-G. The leaves are enormous. It will bloom a little purple bloom on there in the middle of the summer, which I tend to pinch off because sometimes it can get a little leggy looking. But you just can't beat it for color and texture and drama for sure.
Yeah, and obviously it shows here, but just want to reinforce that point. A lot of this is leaf color and leaf texture, which is one of the things we work with so much in these shade environments.
That's right.
So these are great ideas if you've got sort of that moist or poorly drained, shady condition. You can see all the beautiful things you can grow. Have to take another commercial break, but I hope you stay with us because we've still got more ideas ahead. We're going to get right back to our garden extremes, and I've got a picture coming up here again. I think this is, let's see, this is again a picture of another part of American University on their campus. You know, I love visiting other gardens and public places where you can get so many ideas. This is, we're calling where we really have both extremes. Now, this is obviously, this picture, this is full direct sun, but this is right about midday. Where this garden is located, it's shaded by the tall trees all morning long. Midday, the sun hits it. As the sun moves across, then it's in shade all afternoon. So I've got both extremes of sun and shade, and this is a low spot. Again, you can almost see in this picture, I'm looking down on, where water does drain in here. It does sort of collect back there, but they have done such a fantastic job in accommodating all these extremes. They put the little stepper stones through there. And the mazus is the ground cover in there. That's M-A-Z-U-S, and that's a plant that will tolerate the extremes, and it will tolerate the wet conditions. A little bit behind it, you can see that a chorus again is those little tufts of yellow. Our favorite boulders are in there, and those small trees, that's a native tree called Sweet Bay Magnolia, which serves us so well in some of these difficult environments.
Oh my goodness. My every word, at almost every garden I go to, you got to have a sweet bay, you got to have a sweet bay. I bought myself a little sweet bay magnolia and planted it in a very, very wet area of my yard and with not a whole lot of sun. And it was beautiful. It put on growth, it bloomed, it was lovely. And then I got new windows, and the window man dropped his ladder on it. And he cut off half of it, so it was one-sided. And because I have a little bit of obsessive-compulsive stuff, I couldn't stand looking at it. And so I had Merrifield come and dig it up and replant it with the flat side toward the fence, so I didn't have to look at it. Well, don't you know, we had a mild winter. That tree did not lose one leaf over the winter. It looked, well, 3 sides of it remained beautiful, and then next spring it bloomed. Now I have to say it only bloomed 1 flower, but right on top like a little crown, and I was just so pleased with that plant.
Yeah. And that one little flower probably put out enough fragrance just to keep you happy.
It did. Yes, it did.
Absolutely. Well, and again, in that same part of the garden, we get down and look close in the ground, just again showing some of the variety of plants that you can have in this next picture. In the foreground is a perennial. It's called acanthus or bear's breeches. That plant, my understanding, I haven't really grown it. It can be a little bit temperamental. It's not a foolproof plant, but boy, it sure seemed to be thriving in that sort of environment. The hydrangeas right behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, hydrangea is a plant that we've talked about. It's so wonderful that actually requires a moist condition and shade environment. So don't let these extreme conditions make you feel limited, because you've always got choices. And we brought some shrubs in that we thought are really very sturdy shrubs that you could use in almost any extreme. And we'll just take a quick look at these.
Mm-hmm. This is osmanthus. It looks like a holly, but it is not. It's called goshiki is the variety. As you can see, as it leaves out, it has a beautiful little peach-colored leaf, which then settles into a variegated leaf. Right next to it, we have euonymus. I'll tell you another underestimated plant. It's a very common plant, but it is almost impossible to kill a euonymus. They are very, very hardy, and even if something happens to the top of it, you can almost chop it all the way down and it'll come back for you. In the background, you can see beautiful barberry. This one is called Rosy Glow. It's one of the larger barberries, but it would be appropriate for maybe a tall backdrop, even on the top of a slope or something that you could use some darker evergreens in front of. Yeah. So these are very great plants, tough plants for extreme conditions for sure.
Great. Well, Renetta, thanks so much for coming in here today and sharing all these great ideas, because like I said, that's what we can do for you at Merrifield. We've got the landscape service. We have designers like Renetta come out and help you evaluate the environment, give you those choices. If you've got pictures and photographs, you can come in. So you're never short of ideas for what we can do in these environments.
Well, I'm not, but I'll tell you, what I do like to let people know is that even though David and I do this for a living, we also sometimes have constraints with our properties. And I have a very, very wet area on one side of my yard, and I have to admit that I killed quite a few things going in there.
Yeah, I've learned through trial and error myself.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure what to do, so I went into Merrifield, and I decided that this was going to be my garden folly, and I was going to put in a statue. And in this slide, you will see the statue that I put in. It's called Boulder Man, and it's a Frank Lloyd Wright statue, and I'm a big Frank Lloyd Wright fan.
This combines all your interests. The Boulder Man?
Yes. See?
Tough environment?
Tough environment, and he looks a little tortured, which is the way I felt about my area, and so I thought it would be a great thing for that environment. So would you like to see Boulder Man now, David?
Oh, yeah, yeah. How'd things go?
Not good. He wicked up the water and he fell apart.
So an environment so extreme, not even Boulder Man could take it?
No, but look in front of him. What's coming up, David?
Oh, I see a little hosta leaf poking up.
That's right. So the hostas, I'll tell you, prime example. Boulder Man couldn't take it, but hosta could. So there's always something that can be done.
Great. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week with Gardening in Motion.